Welcome to the podcast, Flaherty Follow-Up, episode 14. I'm here today with Christin Mack, president of Arizona Premier Title. We're going to kind of continue our escrow title chat a little bit further. So welcome, Christin.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your journey to your position as president.
Well, as a little girl, I always dreamed of being president. I didn't realize what that meant. I started as a receptionist in the escrow industry. It actually came to me as a hairdresser. So typical path, hairdresser to escrow officer. So I was a hairdresser and I became pregnant. My boyfriend at the time then became fiance and husband. We were both self-employed, and having babies is very expensive. And so I went to work and got a job with insurance. So one of my coworkers, her husband worked for a title company and said they were hiring, and the rest is history. I've been with a title company ever since. So hired as a receptionist, and then moved up the ranks. And that's really how escrow officers learn in the industry, which is kind of interesting and frightening at the same time. There's no formal education. There's no requirement for continuing education. There's no requirement for licensing for individual escrow officers, which is why a lot of escrow officers give different answers for things. If they're not educated, if they don't have the proper training, they may not know the answer. They may think they do, but they may not actually know. And so those are the things that keep me up at night, right? And so I'm really hyper-focused on training and education and continuing to learn myself, because I may not know the right answer. I may not have been trained properly. So that's really important to me. But so worked my way up through the industry, went into sales for a little while, obtained my professional designation through the Arizona State Escrow Association as a certified escrow officer, a certified senior escrow officer, a certified escrow instructor, which is all voluntary. And then went back into escrow as a branch manager, and then came over to Arizona Premier Title as president. So
I love it.
I've got all the alphabet soup after my name. Yes, all the
letters. Perfect. So leading into, this is a great topic to discuss for realtors and buyers and sellers. What should people look for when they're deciding on a title company? Because I think a lot of times it's either already, just pre-printed. If somebody likes somebody, they go with it. But, who picks the title company, and what should they look for, and why is it important for them to pick XYZ? That's
a great question. So I wish I could say interview a lot of them, but we just don't have that kind of time, right? So I think as real estate agents, it's really important to understand who you're working with. And I don't think that happens as much as it should. I think we just kind of go with who maybe our mentor tells us to, or who our brokerage tells us to. And there are a lot of people out there that are excellent. So many companies have really great escrow officers, but there are a lot that aren't. And sometimes we're driven by things that are motivating that aren't necessarily, is someone doing a good job for me? Maybe it's other motivators, and I don't know what those might be. But truly, it's have the conversation with someone. Are they going to do a good job for your client? Because your job as a real estate agent is to you have a fiduciary to your client. Who's going to do the best job for my client? And so everybody has different rates, but they are filed. All escrow rates are filed and public record on the Department of Insurance and Financial Institution website, so you could do your own research there. But truly, if you can, take the time to have that investigation and do that research. Especially now, this is part of, the value of what you guys bring to the table as real estate agents. I mean, you guys are professionals, you're advocates for your client. It's so valuable what the work that you put into it and what you do for your clients. And especially with everything going on right now in the industry, right, with the NAR settlement, people just don't understand the value that you guys bring to the table. And there's so much behind the scenes that you guys are doing that just isn't out there, because you do it because it's your job. You just do it because you love it, and you're serving your client. And really, that there's so much that goes into it, and escrow officers are the same way. They're doing a lot of that stuff behind the scenes. And so really interviewing escrow officers just like a client would interview you for a job.
And I think that's kind of my first, it is ultimately, the buyer's choice. I mean, technically. So when I have buyers, I usually say, hey, this is the company I use, this is why my escrow officer is Maureen because of XYZ, and if there's any questions, but I mean normally that's enough because they're with you because they trust you.
Right.
So, but yes, you have to maintain that relationship and know that you're in good hands in order to pass that on to the client.
Right.
So, perfect. Well, last little segue to finish this up, the NAR settlement. So how is that changing escrow? What things are kind of on the horizon for title and escrow in regard to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from the NAR settlement perspective specifically, nothing really changes for us other than there are some new forms, and I think there's a lot of confusion specific to Arizona, right? There's a lot of confusion. There are many forms, and there's a lot of people just don't know what we're supposed to have. So I can break it down very simply. From an escrow perspective, we take direction from the buyer and the seller.
Yep.
That's it. If the buyer and the seller didn't sign the document, we don't need it.
Yep.
We take direction from buyer and seller, and that's it. So if a broker and a seller signed a document, we don't want it. If a broker and a buyer signed a document, we don't want it. It's got to have buyer and seller signature on it, and then that's something that we need. Okay. And so if we think about that, if a buyer and seller sign an addendum, we need it. Even if we don't feel like it's related to the transaction, maybe it's extending a time period or something like that, it's still a part of the contract. We still need that. So we need a complete contract. So if a buyer and seller signed it, it's probably something that escrow needs.
Pretty simple. I like it. I like it. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate your wisdom. I appreciate our relationship and just having an incredible company that is very reliable. So
thanks for having me.
Absolutely.